Welcome everyone to the Rabbi and the Shrink. This is Dr. Margarita Gurri, Dr. Red Shoe, and this is my favorite rabbi,
Rabbi Yonason Goldson.
And we are delighted today to have David Marlow, the Ikigai guy. Welcome, sir.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Well, and we have, just to start off, tell us about the Ikigai guy. We love that title.
Oh, yeah. So after 30 years of leading company-wide transformations at Fortune 500 companies and serving senior leadership roles, executive roles, that kind of thing, I'd helped over 1,000 people and businesses find fulfillment in their careers and their lives and products through my coaching. And throughout that, I saw this common thread. And it was in the midst of my own career transition that I was able to put a name to the practice that I had been engaging in all along and helping people find their purpose. And it's Ikigai. And I've created a process and framework around Ikigai to help people and businesses uncover their purpose and bring that into their lives. And so that's what I do.
I
Where does the word come from?
I'm sorry, Rabbi.
Yeah,
Where does the word come
origins
from,
of it. The origins, it's a Japanese combination word, and the literal translation is two words combined together that means life purpose or reason for living. And it really goes much deeper, like a lot of Japanese words. It's got a lot of complexities and layers and whatnot to it. And your Ikigai is your purpose, your reason for getting up in the morning. It's a nice, simple way to understand it. But it's in living into that purpose and having that unique expression of you, your gifts, your passions, your skills, your place and opportunity to impact the world, and what you spend your time doing. That's when you're living into your Ikigai. And that's really the expression of it. It's much more than, I always say, it's purpose over profession. It's not your profession. It's not your hobbies. It's the living out that real essence of you in everything that you do.
And is it too personal a question, sir, to ask you what is your Ikigai?
No, not at all. I'd love to answer that. So mine is to encourage, empower, and enable people to live into their purpose. Some people joked with me that isn't that like your purpose is to help purpose? And I said, yeah, it's like an Ikigai inception, right? Within a dream, right? Yeah. But that's always been when I think back over my career, and I've had a very varied career, starting with I was in radio and TV when I was 16 years old. I was in commercial radio. I was a sergeant in the Marine Corps. I was an engineer working on RF and medical equipment, and transitioned to engineering in a different specialty in IT, and then became an executive and so forth, and coached my daughter's 8th grade basketball team to a national championship. And all these things at each point along the line where I was the most alive, where I was doing the most good, was when I was connecting people to helping them be all that they were meant to be. And so that's where, my Ikigai, it was expressed and manifest a lot of different ways. But that was the common thread that I could see as I reflected back over my career.
I really like that, because when I'm asked about what is leadership, my answer is that a leader is one who empowers and enables others to fulfill their individual potential in a way that benefits the world. Because ultimately, and this is coming from very deep Jewish teaching, that the root of happiness is purpose fulfilled. When we feel that we're doing what we are meant to do, and we're doing it well, and we're doing it in a way that is extending, it's transcending us and connecting us with the rest of the world, with those around us, community. Now, there is no greater feeling. It is the greatest source of joy, the greatest sense of self-fulfillment. And it sounds to me that's exactly what you're describing.
It's in total alignment. Yeah, absolutely. It's like the ultimate state of flow, right? You are just in it, and complete fulfillment. Yeah, I love that. I love that, Rabbi. That's a great definition.
So the question that I have is, what can our listeners do to find their Ikigai? I've read some of your stuff, the Rabbi has. We've had some very exciting conversations about your writing. So how do we find our Ikigai?
Yeah. So if you Google Ikigai, you'll often find the Venn diagram, and that's where it talks about the intersection of what you're passionate about, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what they're willing to pay for. And I'll often use that with coaching clients to help them kind of dig into it. The challenge with that is it's focused on the career, and that's not really what ultimately we want you to do. So my advice for anyone just wanting to start off is start reflecting on, when were you at, so we'll go back to what the rabbi was describing. When were you at a moment when you just felt fulfilled, when you were in that state of flow, when you were doing the things that you felt you were meant to do, and spending some time reflecting on that. And you can use the Venn diagram as well to find those things that you've been very good at, or that I hesitate to link it too much to like your childhood dreams. Like, I want to be an astronaut, right? And if I were to reflect on that, I didn't really want to be an astronaut. I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to discover new things. I wanted to learn. I wanted to do those things. So it's a matter of reflecting in that way. And what I always like to do is encourage people to visit their values. So values, verbs, and verse is what I call it. And so spend some time. What are those things that you really value? What are your values? What are the verbs? If you were to pick some verbs out, like mine was encourage, enable, and empower. What are those verbs that really speak to the things you are energized by doing? And then coming up with a verse, which is just a working Ikigai, where you can share that. Because just by being able to tell you my Ikigai, you already have a better understanding of what I'm about, and you can support me better in that. So those are the kind of broad steps that I do with folks to help find it.
One of the things I saw on your writings is that the 5 pillars of Ikigai, and I'd like to examine them all, but the first one really resonated with me because to summarize it, it's the way you phrase it: to decide to be grateful, to decide to experience your today. And we talk about mindfulness, but that's become so much of a catchword.
Yeah.
The idea that attitude is a choice, that in Hebrew, the word for gratitude, it translates literally as recognize the good. Because when you recognize what's good, the natural response is gratitude. And when we're grateful for what we have, we appreciate our lives so much more. We don't become fixated on the problems, on the difficulties. And it simply frames the world in a way that makes it possible for us to be at the top of our game much more often. So I'm going to let you develop the idea from there, if you would.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up. The 5 pillars are really those things that when you're really embracing the thought of Ikigai and living into your fullness, being in the here and now is the specific one you were talking about, and making that conscious choice to be present and to be accepting. And I love the way you describe gratitude. I mean, it's looking for the good and accepting the moment that we're in, and really just being in it completely. I mean, we spend so much of our time in the future or in the past, and we don't live there. We live here. And the future is often, the hopes, the ambitions. The past is often regrets. And so, to your point, I shared the other day too. Forgive, right? Take a moment of forgiveness. Forgive the past. Forgive yourself, and be in that moment of presence and gratitude that you're here and now, and letting those things that have come before go. That just is, it's, as you said, it's the only way you can really and truly be present. And you're right, mindfulness has taken on some connotations that maybe go beyond the most valuable aspects of it. But definitely the idea that you're in the here and now, you're grateful, and you're making those conscious choices. Decide to be that.
Of the 5 pillars, the one that hit me the most was monotask. And the idea of starting small and growing from there. My father, when we would be paralyzed with inactivity because we didn't feel up to a task, he would say that perfectionism is the enemy of completion. And this monotasking, I think, is a great antidote. Just start somewhere. You coined that term. Tell us about that. It's a great term.
Sure. So I worked most of my career in and around productivity and efficiency programs. And a lot of people believed that multitasking was one of the ways that we could get to efficiency, when in reality, our brains won't. Even computers, people talk about computers processing several things. Computers actually stop working on one thing, work on another for a second, and back and forth. You can't see that, and they don't have the cognitive load that we do as a result of that. But it's the same. It's the same idea. And it's not unlike what the Rabbi and I were just talking about. If you're trying to do work on one thing, but you're thinking about the next thing you're working on, and you're juggling 10 different things, you're not in the present. You're not focused, and you're not able to do your very best on the one thing that you should be working on. And so, yes, monotasking is my answer. It's the new thing, right? It's the new black. If people can go on one task, and you also mentioned starting small. So I encourage people, especially when they're trying to make a change, or when they're trying to do anything, is to embrace the gift of small beginnings. Embrace that opportunity to do something small and free, right? So let's say you wanted to write well, I'll share about my post. Many times I'll sit and look at the screen and want to write something, and I want to write the greatest post ever in the history of mankind, right? And when you feel that way, you're all tight. You can't do it. And so I always give myself permission to start small, or to start at less than perfection, because perfection is a lie. I completely agree. And I will literally tell myself, I'll type it. I give myself permission to type a terrible paragraph. And I'm okay with that. And I will type that. I mean, and by doing that, I start to process. I get some momentum. I start to write, and it allows me to be free just to say stuff and to get going, because it doesn't have to be perfect. It's literally, I have permission to write a terrible paragraph. So I'm totally free to write whatever comes to me. And that always starts the motion. And then to be focused on the one task, that frees our minds to fully embrace that moment, as well as all of our resources into it. We're not thinking about the 10 emails we've got to answer later. We're not thinking about the phone call or the milk we have to pick up on the way home from work, or any of the other things, right? We are truly committed to that one thing in that one moment. And that, again, is the ultimate opportunity for us to express ourselves into that.
I think that's brilliant. I asked our listeners what was their ikigai, and we had a response from my friend Sue: creating a solution for problems, creating a strategy to bridge the gaps between the current and desired status, whether it's business or personal. She's more interested in the journey, analyzing the situation, and she loves seeing a design solution actually work. She says that her software engineers, she's an inventor. Software engineers always tell her the opposite of perfect is done, which I think goes to what you were just saying, and with what the rabbi was saying as well.
Yeah, well, that's a beautiful one. Yeah. Does she, can you ask her, does she get a chance to live that out in the majority of her life?
I'm going to allow her to talk. Sue, okay. You've got a voice, woman.
Did you hear a voice? I did. Yes, I actually have had the pleasure of being able to do that much of my life. I was self-employed for about the first 20 years, and then worked in a major cruise line for pretty much the last 20 years. And I was privileged to be recognized as someone that had a contribution that was a bit out of the ordinary, and was basically given the reins to do that. And so when problems surface that kind of traditional methodology and the normal people that worked there could not seem to crack, they'd turn Sue loose on it and lock me in a room and let me do my thing. And it was a privilege. It was an absolute privilege.
Yeah. Well, what a blessing. That is wonderful to hear. I'm excited for you.
Thank you.
And I don't know if you see in the chat, she said she agrees with you, David. Never apologize for not being a good multitasker, because I think there's a weird pride in people saying they're multitaskers, which to me never made any sense, but I don't always see things the way other people do. But I think that she's on team David Marlow, so that's good.
Oh, good. There's one other thing to consider,
isn't it? Go ahead, David.
It is. Yeah, it can't be done. It's been proven in studies that we literally don't multitask, right?
Right.
And there's a huge cognitive load that causes delay. So if you were to work, let's say you were doing 3 different tasks and each one had 3 different elements to it, you switch from one to the other, now you've delayed 20 seconds to 20 minutes. That depends on the kind of switching you're doing. And instead of finishing all 3 of those, in an hour, it's more like 3 or 4 hours, even though you feel like you're doing all this work. The other thing is, it's been proven you can't do it. So why do we feel like we want to do that? And part of it is sometimes much easier to tell ourselves we're really busy and I'm checking all these emails and I'm doing all this than to face the work that we have to do, or to face maybe some personal things or other things. It's like, if we're so busy and so confused, we're not really again, back to being in the moment and being aware of what really needs to be done or what we really need to deal with. I had a offline conversation with someone after the monotasking post the other day, and that's really what she came to, was that she's kind of avoiding thinking about certain things by answering email and leaving voicemails and doing a bunch of things all at one time, not really facing the reality that she needs to face. And it caused her to pause and realize that was what she was using multitasking for. The others, I do think there's just go ahead.
I was going to say, I think it goes back to a point you were making earlier about sitting down and writing, which I can relate to perfectly because I do exactly the same thing. You phrased as giving yourself permission to write a bad paragraph. I immediately thought in terms of forgiving myself for writing a bad paragraph, and with the multitasking too, is forgiving myself for not doing more than the one thing I'm doing, because it feels like I should be doing other things. And if you could, I'd really like to move into a discussion about forgiveness, because it's something I struggle with. I'm pretty good at forgiving myself, maybe too good, but philosophically, and I mean, forgiveness is a huge component in Jewish thought. I mean, the Day of Atonement, the high holidays, they're all about forgiveness. And if somebody comes to me and says, I did something wrong, please forgive me, and I feel they're sincere, I have no trouble forgiving them. If they don't come to me, I have a lot of trouble. And there are people that are living rent-free in my head because of things that they've done that still bother me. Now there's if you feel betrayed by someone, if you feel seriously wronged by someone, I mean, that's pain. And pain doesn't go away just because you will it to go away. So do you have any insights on, I know it's better for me to forgive and to let go. I know that. And yet I'm not successful in doing that. Can you address a strategy and approach for actually forgiving people? Sure.
I'm so glad you asked me about this very easy topic to talk about. Yeah, actually.
Please forgive me.
Yeah, I will. I do. Later I'll figure it out. So I want to address it from 2 angles. One, so I'll go to Christian scripture, which talks about if you don't forgive others, you can't be forgiven, right? And I used to see that almost as not a literal curse, but like a burden, right? Like a curse, like, oh my gosh, if I don't do this, I'm not going to be forgiven. And what I have come to understand, and a lot of it's through the reflection in Ikigai, is I've got to come to a place where I can forgive myself, so that I can forgive others. Because if I come to a place where I understand that I need forgiveness, that I am worthy of forgiveness, that we all do things and we all are in that same framework, then I can forgive not only myself, but others. Because it's like, I want off the hook. I want to be able to let it go. So there's that. And then the other, I heard an analogy once that really worked for me, because I struggled with the feelings, right? I wanted to forgive, but as you said, if you've been wronged, especially if you've been seriously hurt by somebody maybe close to you, or in some way that's just a very deep hurt, and wronged, you want to forgive them, but you still hold on, or you still have feelings, that hurt might still be there. And the way it was explained to me, this worked for me, and perhaps it'll work for some of you, was if someone has taken your wallet and stolen your money, you can forgive them, and it's still forgiveness if you don't put your wallet on the table in front of them alone again. Right? Have they come to a place where, again, they've repented, they've said they're sorry. There's a level of trust that's broken in that, and that's another issue to deal with that is outside of the scope of forgiveness. So you can forgive. It may not immediately change, or maybe in some cases ever. I mean, certainly some things people may or may not have done, traumatic things like that you wouldn't associate with them again. But understanding it in that way has helped me anyway. And then the value of it is, if you're holding on to those things, you can't be present. You can't be in the here and now. You can't make those decisions to be fully in this moment if you're still dwelling on those things. So that's where the power of forgiveness for yourself, for others, all comes into play. And those are some things that have helped me along the way.
That's wonderful. Which brings us to the pivotal question that our listeners are always asking. What does Ikigai have to do with ethics?
Oh my goodness. What does Ikigai have to do with that? I'm surprised that ethics came into play here today, given the rabbi's participation here.
Well, the whole podcast is Everyday Ethics Unscripted. I created the podcast to further the discussion, especially in Americans, but globally, on the issue of everyday ethics.
Yeah. So one thing that I want to talk about from an integrity issue to link to ethics is, and rather than integrity in the I can leave my wallet on the table in front of you kind of integrity, is integration in ourselves, and allowing ourselves to both understand the true nature that we have and our purpose, and all the things Rabbi shared earlier about the value of living into your purpose. And when we're not doing that, when we're not living in that integrated life, we're disintegrated, right? And the integrity in that sense is broken. So I love a quote from Fran Lebowitz. She said, it's very psychically draining not to be writing. I mean, if you're supposed to be writing, right? So if you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, at each point you're damaging your human integrity, right? The integral part of you. And so the connection of Ikigai, when you're living into your Ikigai, when you're living it out in those places, when you're being in the here and now, when you're starting small, when you're taking the joy in the little things, when you're bringing that harmony and sustainability to your life, you're bringing that level of integrity, and you're respecting other people at that same level. And to me, that strengthens both the requirement, but also your desire to act ethically, to respect that other person at the deepest possible levels.
Wow.
What I love about these conversations is an unexpected new insight. I discovered a while back, Professor Stephen Carter says that integrity comes from the word integer, which means an integer is a whole number. So to be whole, to be one with what one espouses. But for some reason, my mind never made the step that you just mentioned, David, which is to integrate, which is another form of the word. And that how do I become whole is by integrating, internalizing, absorbing all the truths to which I have access. And if I don't do that, then the natural result will be disintegration, which I think is something, as Doctor, you mentioned in starting the podcast, we're witnessing a disintegration of our society, of our culture, of our politics that needs to be reversed, which is why we're here. So thank you for that new way of understanding the word integrity, which I think is something that we can all benefit from.
Wow,
That was absolutely beautiful. Let's start by strengthening our ikigai, our understanding of our own ikigai. You've created these 5 pillars. We've talked about 2 of them. If you wouldn't mind reviewing your 5 pillars and then talking more about achieving our ikigai, like steps to take.
Sure. So speaking of integrity, I want to point out that Ken Mogi actually identified or pulled out the 5 pillars, and I have expanded on them and modified them slightly, but I want to make sure that Ken gets due credit, for I did not create them.
Well, thank you, Ken, and thank you, David Marlow, for your integrity.
Sure. So they are, and I'll just recite them, that being in the here and now, so being present, accepting the moment, starting small, embracing the gift of small beginnings, the joy of little things. So that gratitude the Rabbi was talking about, harmony and sustainability. And by sustainability there, I don't mean like sustaining the earth by recycling that, but being at a point and engaging in such a way as that you could continue to do that and sustain that and continue living that way, and balancing that harmony. That's why it's not about your job. It's not about your hobbies. It's not about even your family and friends. It's about living that integrated life. And then releasing yourself. So self-forgiveness, self-reflection, investing in understanding the human that you are and what that means to be that person in your entirety. So those are the 5.
As a psychologist, I see many people who are disappointed in themselves because they do not feel that they have found their purpose. Please speak to that.
Well, I think that goes back, if you think to the Fran Lebowitz quote, right? It is psychically draining when you're not connected to what you are called to do. And I think for me, one struggle that I had on a personal level, just thinking about having a calling, I felt like there was a calling for me when I was young, and if I didn't find it, I would be lost. I mean, it's like, oh my gosh, if I don't put all this time and effort and energy into finding it, I'll miss God's calling. And what I have found is that in the sense of what we're talking about today, God's calling for me is to be me and to be that fullness of me and that creation and living that out. It's not about whether I was an accountant or a Marine sergeant or this or that. Those are professions and those are ways of manifesting it. I can't miss the calling if I truly uncover what's already there, which is, the real me. I think we all have a sense of that when we're young. And then I say uncovering rather than discover, because I think it's your ikigai is there. The true nature of you and your purpose is there in your heart, and life and disappointments and burdens and jobs and kids and all these things kind of pile on top of it. And it's our effort to uncover that and really understand that's missing for many, many people, and for all the right reasons. I mean, we all get busy. We all have. I talked to a couple of my kids are now married and have kids of their own, and I think that is the toughest time in life, because you're just pulled so many different ways. You're trying to build a career, you're trying to raise your kids, you're trying to maintain a connection to your spouse, and all the things, right? And there's just so much pulling you and kind of uncovering your ikigai, if you will. So that to folks that have felt that, I would say I understand that, and I think you've described the danger of not living into your ikigai.
There's so much we could unpack right there. And what I homed in on is the word you use, the word harmony, which is one of my favorite words, because the Hebrew word shalom, which is often translated as peace, more accurately or more literally translates as harmony. And the sages teach, the mystics teach, that there are 7 spiritual levels that correspond to the 7 levels of the 7 days of creation. And the first level is kindness, just that outpouring of giving and being directed towards others. And the final level, the ultimate level, is called sovereignty. And that's mastery over all of those different elements that you describe. Ultimately, it's mastery over ourselves. But included in that is mastery over all the component parts, all of the various aspects of our circumstances. And that relates to harmony, because what is harmony? Harmony is all the pieces are in place and everything is doing what it's supposed to be doing in a way that complements everything else. And there's a fusion into an integration. And this is why King David in his Psalms introduces so many of them with the opening for the conductor. Who is the conductor? The conductor is God. Who is the most important person in an orchestra? The one person who's not holding an instrument. Because the conductor keeps all the players playing in harmony. And that recognizing ourselves as part of something that's universal, part of something that's transcendent, and recognizing that we can master ourselves in a way that integrates us into a higher purpose and a larger purpose. That's what we're in this world to accomplish. And of course, the idea is not, we're not really supposed to achieve this, I don't think. We're here, we're to pursue it. We are to be involved in the process, which is ongoing and never ending.
Yeah, I had an influential priest in my life. We're going from the rabbi's thoughts to the Roman Catholic. During my confirmation, many of us in the teenage years, we didn't know our purpose for life, and we were often trying to change those things about ourselves we didn't like. And the priest gently chided us by saying, God gave you your strength so you could do his work. But it was in those weirdnesses that he guided you to find your path. And that we should embrace those weirdnesses and understand, not just indulge them, but understand what they mean and help them guide us. And I think accepting all of us is a theme that's pretty modern these days. The perfect imperfections, from the Psalms and whatever. What do you have to say about that, embracing our weirdnesses?
Well, I admit to being a recovering perfectionist myself. So, hi.
Even by the way you said that, you're demonstrating the sustainability of the pursuit.
That's from a support group. You have company here.
I think he does have good company, all of us.
Yeah. And so absolutely when you think about what are the best, I tell people that if they thought of themselves as a product, right? You want to be the one best in the world, right? And you can't be the best in the world I can't be the best Lean Six Sigma guy. I can't be the best. I used to play trombone, couldn't be the best trombonist, right? But I can be the best at bringing all those things together, right? And creating that unique personality and the traits. And as you said, that those things, like I notice I've always had sort of a sense for process, and when things were running well or weren't running well, I could just even as a young man, I could walk into a room and just almost see where things could be improved. Now, that's a really great thing when you're, in your 40s and 50s and running transformation programs. When your parents, when you share with your parents the insight you have about what could be improved around the house, they're not as open to it, right? They don't embrace that unique quality that you have. And a lot of times the world doesn't, but understanding that those idiosyncratic aspects of you and your personality blended together make and I don't mean to just connect it to work, but a talent stack that is unique and has an opportunity to bring perceptions and things in a totally different view. I mean, I think just like this podcast, the world that you know and come from, Doctor and Rabbi, very different worlds. It's a better understanding when you share your thoughts and perceptions and perspectives, and gives a whole new insight, right? Like a whole new idea, and so on and so on. So if you think about within yourself, those unique aspects are blended and meant to create a unique insight, a unique understanding, and sharing that with the world. I would encourage people who feel like they have those weirdnesses and idiosyncratic things that seem off. It's like, look for how that might blend with what other things you do, and how that might be a blessing to the world.
Absolutely. And I added something that I thought was philosophically in line with what you're saying, David Marlow. Making mistakes is better than faking perfection. And I think that that's lovely, Aya. Thank you.
There's a beautiful idea that's expressed by one of the leading rabbis in the 1800s. He said, we don't have to change ourselves. We simply have to uncover who we truly are.
Yeah, there you go.
And, when you talk about changing yourself, that sounds so intimidating. And so, when there's something wrong with me right now, no, we have a tremendous amount of potential. We have inner beauty, we have distinction, we have qualities, and we have to work to let that out. Because there are so many impediments, and there are so many distractions, and there are so many ways we get tripped up not being true to ourselves. And true to ourselves is not just a cliche. It's being true to our true selves, the people we were created to become.
And that's why I have the rabbi here every time. I think that many people think they're supposed to be all things to all people. But if we have good partners and good guests and people in our world, all we have to do is the best we can at bringing out the best in those conversations, those realities. And I think that David Marlow, you've got that down. So we have a word of the day, Rabbi.
Which is a very good segue, in fact,
Well,
because the word of the day is diapason. You may not be familiar with this word. It actually originates as one of the stops of an organ that allows the tones to come forth. Now that needs a little bit of explanation. The way the old-fashioned pipe organs worked is that there was steam that was built up inside, and the organist would release that steam to flow through particular pipes to create the sound. So it's not that he had to push the air through. He had to let the air through. And I think it's a beautiful expression of what we are talking about. Now the word has come to expand to mean the entire range of a musical instrument or a voice, a burst of harmony, the sort of potential, the fulfilled potential of the creativity and that harmonious energy that resides within us. And the more we can make connections with others, the more we can connect to our inner selves, the more together we create a community, a society, a culture that is one of fulfillment and beauty.
Wow, that's powerful. Yeah.
Thank you, Rabbi. That was amazing. So David Marlow, you have one last word of wisdom, call to action, something for our listeners.
Okay, so I will, excuse me, I'll share something that really started my Ikigai journey long ago, and I'll just ask you to ponder the same question. I had a dream, and it's one of those dreams where I could almost recall the whole thing right now, and it was well over 20 years ago. And in the dream, a guy who happened to be the coach of the San Francisco 49ers, totally unrelated. I don't like the 49ers. I don't know what was the meaning of this. So that aside, said to me, "What would you do if you were done?" And that was the end of the dream. And when I woke up, I could not get that question out of my head.
And what's that last word? What would you do if you were what?
If you were done.
Oh, dying.
Done.
Finished.
Oh, done.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. And I have to say, it started me on a passive reflection that led me to Ikigai, like done working, done what? And I won't go into a whole lot of explanation, because I want to leave you with the question. I want you to live into the question. What would you do if you were done? And see where that reflection takes you. I think it might be a really amazing trip for you.
Wow.
That's very striking. And I don't usually dabble in dream interpretation, but I would suggest that who were the 49ers? They were mining for gold. And so as we seek gold in our lives, we seek treasure. The real question is, what are we going to do with the treasure when we find it? Because there are all kinds of treasures, and we all have access to some of them. And the question is, why do you want to win the lottery? Why do you want to have $1 million or $100 million or $1 billion? What are you going to do with it if you had it? And so I think that's what resonates in my mind from your question. And David, thank you so much. You and I connected on LinkedIn a while back, and I think we've been kind of a mutual admiration society since then. So it's really a pleasure for me to get a chance finally to talk to you face to face, whatever that is in the virtual world. And thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. And Doctor, do you have a last word for us today?
Oh, I'm never short an opinion. David Marlow, you had said when you were a kid you wanted to be an astronaut. And I do believe you have become one. You help everyone defy gravity. And I think that the whole Ikigai thing about being present in the here and now is certainly within our grasp as we listen to you and read what you have to say. I put in the chat your links for Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. I urge everyone to follow you and learn more about you. And I will put your email as well in the chat so everyone can reach you. David Marlow, Rabbi, always an amazing gift. And thank you so much for joining us on the Rabbi and the Shrink, an unscripted conversation about everyday ethics. Thank you all. We'll see you next Tuesday at 12:30. Thank you. Are you guys frozen?
We were waiting for you to stop the recording.
Oh, well, I
Both the experience of it. We have the experience of being parents, but also we're not under the pressure. And so we're a little more free to maybe have the patience we would have liked to have had, or the understanding. And that's something my wife and I try and impart to our grandkids, is just be that gap filler. And that's not a gap, and there's any judgment of something missing. It's more, hey, they're heads down, just trying to keep these kids alive and keep their careers going and all those things. And I don't have that level of pressure, so I can be that gap filler for that. And I think there's a lot of
very interesting you say that. I actually wrote an essay about my grandfather, who apparently was a difficult man to his kids, to his business associates. And when I was born, I was the only grandchild.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah.
And when I was born, my mother told me people could not believe him around me.
Aw.
It's just a side of him came out that no one had ever seen.
Aw.
And he passed away when I was 6, so we didn't have a lot of time together.
Oh, I'm
But
sorry.
but it just when I reflect on it, my experience with him was just one of unadulterated joy. My uncle spent his entire life blaming his father for all of his problems in life. And my conclusion was exactly what you just said, David, that without the pressure of being responsible for the product,
Right.
he was finally free to be himself. And it's just sad that it didn't come out in more aspects of his life.
Yeah. Wow. That's a great illustration of it. But yeah.
It really is. I mean, that's like the Heidi movie, the original one. She comes to live with this grump, and he softens her heart. I do think the grandparent role is an essential one. And when I came to this country, as a refugee from Cuba, the people that lived across the street from us became our grandparents in many ways. And they were amazing. And without them, I think my life would have been very different. I had grandparents, but they died, pretty early. And I think the Ikigai grandparent is a winner. If you need us to have conversations with you about our experiences, let us know. We'd be honored and to be of help in that amazing pursuit. I think it's a brilliant idea.
Or write the book so it'll help me. My grandkids are still very young. So.
There you go. That's a great idea. Oh, I like that. Okay.
Yeah.
Think about that, because those are compelling. So I mean, everybody has a story. Some are a little more illustrative of the point, right? Those are great.
Rabbi, that is a great story, And I love being a grandparent. It's certainly different than being a parent.
Oh yeah.
And it's brings out a different awareness, because since you're not so busy, it's kind of like you're standing still. Like when you're a parent, you're a moving target. You're all over the place. As a grandparent, you're more still, and so you kind of see things more clearly. Plus, you're older and less dumb, which helps. And so it's really been interesting. So I'll say, I have a thought to my kids, and then let me know if you want it shared, because I don't want to be intrusive, but at the same time, I'm going to be intrusive in my own thoughtful way when they're ready. And then they ask about it. So in our family, we say, would you like to sit on the porch? And that means I've got an idea, or may I make you a cup of coffee? If it's a really big idea, it's un cafecito. It's a Cuban coffee, cortadito or café con leche. Those are for the more serious talks. We go back to the Cuban roots. So
I love that. So the level of conversation or the depth or intensity is dependent on what coffee you offer in the conversation.
On the purity of the coffee.
Wow. Oh, I love that. I'm like a coffee geek, so that's perfect. That's a real. I really
you
like
drink.
That.
What coffee do you drink, sir?
I do a lot of espresso, and I think for the last year I've only had espresso. My wife and I have been doing intermittent fasting, and so, but I love lattes. I love breves, cortados, anything that has some coffee in it. Would be fine. Although I don't like, people are always sending me like coffee flavored things. And I hate that. It's like, I don't know what it is. It's like, oh yeah, you'll like this. It's coffee flavor. It's like, no, I have coffee for that.
I also am not a fan of flavored coffee.
No, I'm not either. I like
coffee in its purity is a lovely thing. So see, Rabbi knew he was smart. He likes the espresso.
That's right.
Oh yeah.
The truth is, I never found anything I really liked more than instant Nescafe.
Oh my goodness.
My father would love you for that.
I'm devastated to learn this about you.
Well, but I've you don't have to feel too bad. My cardiologist told me I have to give up coffee, so now I drink Japanese tea.
Oh really? Oh, okay.
Doesn't Japanese tea have just as much caffeine?
Oh no.
No?
No, the tea has much less than coffee, and apparently there's other good stuff in the tea. So
Yeah, there's a
Well,
lot of.
there
Doesn't
you
taste
go.
nearly as good, but those are the breaks.
Oh man. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that because as I came late to the game and coffees, I did not drink it as a kid because my parents drank, the Folgers, and my dad up to his dying day would like make coffee in the morning, and then that was what was in there on the heater all day long, and he would
Oh,
drink that black. He was in
oh,
he was in submarines in World War II and learned to drink coffee there, and they just it was just like you could tar the road with it if you were done with it at the end of the day kind of thing. And so I had no interest in it. And then I went to France and had espresso for the first time. And of course, everything food related in France is fabulous, right? I mean, so I'm like, wow, where has this been all my life? This is like really good stuff. And then the effect of coffee too. And then my wife stayed at home with our kids, and then the plan was for her to go back to work when they got older, and that's how we were going to fund college and all that. She became a barista at Starbucks, and so she learned and I'm like, I've got a personal barista now. So yeah, I'm very into coffee, but
a
the good
blessed
kind.
man. Very good. I'm glad for that. That's so cool. Hey, Rabbi, I almost brought up the idea that I think your wife is ikigai with her garden. She's talking about how simple it is, just one thing at a time, and she's always changing it and whatever. And I didn't want to put her on the spot, but I think your wife is embracing the ikigai with the front porch garden.
Yeah, it's a release for her. She teaches, which is a pretty demanding job, and she likes things of beauty. For most of our, well, for pretty much for our entire marriage, budgeting has been an important part of the way we run the house. And the garden is something that she can do with very little financial investment that brings beauty to her life.
Well, I think it looks like $1 million, your garden. I was telling the rabbi, he had said he wanted to introduce me to his wife's garden, and I think that's a great blog or book or keynote, my wife's garden. I mean, I think it's just perfect. So what's next for you, David Marlow? You've got so many cool things you're doing, and I think you're making a huge difference. I love the softness of your tone, but that it has an authority. It's not judgmental. It's not harsh. I love the tone with which you share your ideas. So what's next?
Oh, I appreciate those kind words. So I am still trying to figure out exactly how to share this ikigai. I mean, my initial thing, even though I was working on this on a personal level, I started sharing it on LinkedIn just as a matter of course, and it's gotten such a great reaction that I feel like I need to do it in that formal way as opposed to just along with, because I had planned to be a consultant and do lean transformations and things like that. And so working on a couple of classes, and then I really do want to write. I'd like to write 5 different books. I have that may be part of my problem is I have so many I want to write that I haven't started writing the one, right? But I love bringing this to people and helping them find it. And so to the degree that I can do that, that's what I'm looking to do. Formally, I have in fact, as soon as I'm done with this, I've got to get working on a proposal with a company to do a transformation program with them. And I'm looking to incorporate Ikigai into the lean transformation work that I do. And so that might be a full-blown year-long consulting gig that would keep me gainfully employed and buying high-end coffee. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that's so. I know somebody who's brilliant. His name is David Marlow, and he would say, write down the bad ideas for all your 5 books, and enjoy the badness of it all. Embrace the suck, as we would say, right?
That's right.
I don't know. You might listen to him. He's a brilliant guy.
It's funny you say that, and I really appreciate what you said as well. I have a few friends that I will occasionally call them when I am stuck like that, and I'll say, okay, I need you to be me for me. And to do just what my wife's very good at that too. She's and I mean that sincerely. She's like, so I know someone who would maybe say that perhaps you should consider. And I tell her, no, it's no fair using my Jedi mind tricks on me, but she
no
does it
fair at all, but very bright. So you have two new friends, the Rabbi and I. If ever we can be of service to you as you follow your Ikigai, please don't hesitate to text us. I don't like phone or email, but text I like. I think it's faster and easier. So please don't hesitate to text us.
And I don't like texting, so please email.
Okay, I will remember that. I do want to. You said you're going to have a transcript of this, right? I do want to get the 7 levels that you were talking about, and some of the other. I think some of the sage advice you've no pun intended, that from the sages. I mean, that you've shared. Connecting to purpose is really, really a spot on, and would love to incorporate that into the learning too.
Hey, Rabbi, I love
I can
that
send you. I think I'm sure I have an essay somewhere on the 7 levels.
Good. If you share that with both of us, that would be great.
Yeah, and I have. I was already going to share an interview with Margarita, but in that interview, there's a whole discussion about the interconnection between happiness and purpose. So I'll send you a link for that as well.
And one of my specialty areas is helping people identify the barriers to their Ikigai.
Okay. I
didn't use the word Ikigai, but barriers to purpose, barriers to their goals, to happiness. I came to this country as a refugee and got beat up quite a bit when I was 4.5, 5 for being Cuban. And I'd come home a little bloody, and my parents would comfort us, and my father would say, what's your plan? What are you going to do now? And my mother would say, that's Jesus. And I thought, well, he had a great right hook. But what I learned is that when we're in the weeds, it's a wonderful opportunity to choose happiness and to understand, what am I learning from this now? And it's interesting. That way you don't get bitter and you don't hold grudges. You think, oh, interesting opportunity. Let's learn from it so we can move on. It's interesting. So Rabbi and I are still figuring out ways to be of service to people, combining our wisdom and other people's wisdoms. If you have any ideas where we can be of service, please do let us know.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And, we're on a mission. So we're happy to have partners anywhere we can find them.
Oh, I love it. Well,
and we're good and stalwart partners to anybody. So please do let us know, how can we be of service? We love your mission.
Oh, thanks. And I appreciate yours as well. And so glad to get to meet you. And Yonason, I feel like we've talked before, but we haven't. And so this is really cool.
It's a strange world, isn't it?
The two of you been connected. And I'm working on learning to do the social media so I can connect differently with people there. So that'd be great. Well, David, thank you so very much. Please thank your wife and family for us as well. And Rabbi, as always, I'm just so delighted you're on this journey with me.
It's a good journey, and
grateful, sir.
Good to make it in good company.
Well, yeah, we're always in good company, aren't we? All right, you guys take care. Besos and blessings, as we say in Spanish.